So what happens when two third-generation Arizona women authors who are passionate about their state start talking about experiences, insights, and memories of different places? They don't stop talking. They write a book, and then they start a podcast. Welcome to Celebrating Arizona with Julie Morrison and Lisa Schnebly Heidinger. Grab your favorite drink and settle in. We're celebrating Arizona, going everywhere from A to Z. And we're off.
And welcome back to Celebrating Arizona. I am so excited. Matt Nelson is here with me, and he is the leader, the guru, the big guy with the Arizona Trail, which is one of my favorite places, reaching back to 1989. And he was just about to tell me why he had said, autumn's my favorite season. And I said, wait. I want all of us to get to hear this. So, hi.
Hello.
And why is autumn your favorite season?
I think there's so many reasons, and people that have spent enough time in Arizona will probably be able to identify with, it's a magical time of year. You know, we have these crisp, cool mornings, these beautiful, warm, calm days, incredible sunsets in November. And this year, which is very unusual, and I just noticed today on a morning walk, is that I'm seeing more springtime blooms now than I saw in the springtime. So there's trailing windmills and so many other flowers, fairy dusters, things that normally we just see in spring that are out in November. I think the other reason is that when I very first discovered Arizona, it was the weekend before Thanksgiving in 1987. I think it was my very first trip to Tucson from a small mountain town in California where I grew up, and I instantly fell in love with this place. And so there's something about the air and the light and just the feeling of November and autumn that attaches me to this place.
Oh, well, and I've been told that the physical memory is a real thing, and that times do bring stuff back. Yeah. So that would make sense.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I know that you and I first met, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, at an Arizona Trail annual meeting. And I think it was before I was on the board. I think it was the centennial, maybe? Probably.
Your memory sounds much better than mine, so I will say yes to all of that. But I love how the Arizona Trail connected us and continues to connect so many people.
So many people, yeah. So, yes, and yet, you did a lot of things before you got to the trail. Can you back up and tell me what led you in your life to this point? First of all, where you were before Arizona, how you got here.
Wow, the life story of Matt Nelson. This could take a while, so I'll give you the short version. I grew up.
I got time.
I grew up in the Owens Valley of California, so very small town at about 4,000 feet, surrounded by sagebrush. But on both sides of this valley are 14,000-foot peaks. The Sierra Nevada on one side, the east side of Sierra Nevada,
Whoa.
and then the White Inyo Mountains to the east. And both about topping out at around 14,000 feet. So I grew up. It's in the Great Basin, but I grew up in like what I didn't know at the time was the most beautiful place in the world. But after living there for 17 years
Really?
and discovering Tucson through bike racing and travels and family and things. The Sonoran Desert was the only other environment I had ever seen where I felt at home. And that was unusual for me because I came from a very small town and really only ever lived there. So being able to come to the Sonoran Desert and immediately feel like I was home was something that was intriguing. So when I graduated high school and it was time to leave this small town where I grew up, I immediately came to Tucson, Arizona, and have been here pretty much ever since, except for lots of travels and a little bit of time away for projects and things. But yeah, Tucson has been home for all those years. And before Arizona Trail, there you go.
1987 and whenever, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Fill in that gap.
Oh yeah, fill in that gap. So, bicycling, and I think the Sonoran Desert is what brought me to Tucson. But it was really the community and then the landscapes that surround me that have kept me here. And so I really found and continue to find solace in nature and natural connections when I'm out in mountains and canyons and forests and things. And so the more I explored in and around Tucson, I found mountain ranges like the Santa Ritas and the Huachucas and the Chiricahuas and the Pinaleños. And every time I ventured out, I found that it just kept getting better. It kept getting more exciting. And then I discovered the Grand Canyon, and it took a while. It wasn't my go-to place. I had lived in Tucson for many years and had not yet visited, and that very first visit is what helped me fall in love with Arizona forever. What I found myself doing was working in the outdoor context, right? So I was an outdoor guide. I worked with a lot of schools and school districts in experiential education and outdoor adventure education, whether that was hiking or day trips, ropes course programs. But I was always connected to the outdoors. And then I found that my real calling was helping people connect to nature. And I did that through a lot of writing. So I wrote for about a dozen newspapers and magazines in Arizona, mostly about outdoor destinations.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have over 500 published articles from age 17 to age
Holy
probably 40.
smoke. And I hope you brought something to read at the end of the show. Did I ask you to bring something to read at the end of the show?
No, you did not.
I didn't. Yeah. Okay. My bad. Is there something that because remember, we get to turn this on and off. Is there something that you like that you've written that you will get and bring back and read it at the end of the show? I mean, we can do that.
Let me give that some thought. It might be relatively,
might
be inaccessible at this point, considering where I am and where it may be.
Okay.
Buried in the shed.
Okay.
Yeah. I would have to battle pack rats. Yeah, I would have to battle pack rats in order to extract old articles. So we're not going to happen.
I don't want them to have them, but I don't want you to battle them either. So we'll leave that. I'm trying to think of the guy's name, the artist who lives on the reservation, who was a Navajo code talker. Nakai Carlos, Navajo artist. Anyway, whoever I'm thinking of, his dad was a code talker. And we went up, my photographer and I, out of Flagstaff to Window Rock to interview him. And we get to his house outside Window Rock somewhere. And we walk in like the back door, and we're in a huge screen from the waist up, wood from the waist down, plywood place. And so it's all open and hot, and it's all shelves. And the shelves are full of art. And he says, "This is my kids' work, my kids' early work." And I thought, oh my God, this is how it's being stored. And when we got back to Flag, I made a panic call to NAU Special Collections and Archives, and they ended up eventually getting that.
Wow, good work.
Release. So now part of me thinks, do I need to worry about your early stuff?
No,
or is it
nobody cares. No, it's just, writing is ephemeral. I think that it's not meant to be, historians would argue, but at least most of the stuff that I've written, if it's been read, then it's alive in somebody's memory. I don't need to archive paper and it's written for a time, and yes, it's nice to look back in history, but no, I have no attachment to any of that.
Oh, that's fascinating. I save every flippin' word, and that's why my study looks way worse than yours. Because I can't throw away writing. It's writing. It's too important. Interesting. Okay, well, then let me ask you a question about places you've been. Tell me your Arizona. We all have an Arizona. And we're going to talk about the trail later. But right now, so maybe it starts with the canyon, but I want to hear some of those places. And why they're your owner. What about the canyon kept you with us?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is that it was probably my first Arizona experience. So I'll share that with you. There are tens of thousands of Arizona experiences, but the one that comes to mind was really my introduction to the Sonoran Desert. So I traveled out here. I was probably 13 years old and came to Tucson for El Tour de Tucson, that bicycling event that happens every November. And then I think the day after the event, my uncle, who has lived here for a very long period of time, not blood uncle, but I grew up knowing him as my uncle my entire life. And he was really my reason for moving to Tucson. He's the only person I knew, and he'd welcomed me to come here. And so he said, "Let's go up Picacho Peak." And I said, "Okay, Uncle Richard." I had no idea what that was or where that was, and I think I had flown in, so I didn't really see it. And so we're driving from Tucson north toward this beautiful, like, temple-like peak in the distance. And he said, "You see that? That's where we're going." And I thought, no way. And as we started hiking up, I couldn't see a logical route to the top, but I followed him And anybody who's ever been, it's a short hike, just a few miles. It goes pretty quickly because it's straight up the mountainside. And so hiking and scrambling and climbing was, fun and adventurous. We saw a chuckwalla. There were turkey vultures. And I was like, this is the strangest environment I've ever seen. And then we get to the top and we're looking out across the desert. It was very early in the morning. And there was something that I saw up there that just blew me away. And it wasn't anything in particular. It was the landscape. The way that the Sonoran Desert looked from up high, it looked like a living organism. And all of the little arroyos were like cracks in the skin. And all the saguaros were like hair follicles. And so I was looking out across this gigantic, like living thing. And I'd never seen anything like it. And it stuck with me. So years later, when it was time for me to leave where I grew up, my only choice at that time was Tucson, Arizona, because of this experience I had with the desert.
Oh my gosh. So you moved here just knowing your uncle?
You got it. Yep, I knew one person that invited me to come and live for a while and ride my bicycle and work for a little bit. And the more that time went on, the more I fell in love with the place, the stronger community I built. And, just like life goes, one thing leads to the next. But I think when you're in the right place, when there's all that synergy and harmony. And that has happened with me here consistently for the past 30-some years.
Oh, I love that. Sometimes when I've given a speech somewhere, probably because Sedona Schnebly, blah, 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 people would come up and go, I'm a third, fourth, fifth generation Arizona. And I'd say, oh, that must be great. Good for you. And then I would say, but to me, the Arizonans are the people who come here and something just grabs them. Something reaches out to them. Something welcomes them. And the rest of us don't have that. Those are Arizonans.
Ooh,
And
what a
you're
beautiful
Arizona.
perspective. Thank you, Lisa. So the other experience I'll share.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Yeah, the other experience I'll share is Grand Canyon, because I feel like it is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And I've traveled to almost every continent. I've been on lots of grand adventures in huge canyons, climbed lots of tall mountains,
Wow.
glaciers, expeditions in South America, Denali, in Alaska. Lots and lots of stories about international adventures. Kenya, East Africa, Mount Kenya. There's a long list of fun, but Grand Canyon is by far my favorite place in the world. On planet Earth, there's no place that is as powerful and as beautiful as Grand Canyon. And it took me from 1992 to about the year 1999 in order for me to experience the canyon. And it was because, oddly, I ended up on an expedition in South America, climbing a very tall mountain called Cerro Aconcagua. It's the tallest peak in the Americas, at almost 23,000 feet tall. And I was down there with a group of
Holy
folks.
smoke, I've never heard of it even.
Yeah. It's the tallest one in the Andes. And it's this big, beautiful mountain, sacred mountain. And so I'd gone down there 3 years in a row to both attempt to climb it and then to clean up trash, because it's a very popular international destination. And so I went down the first year with a friend. We cleaned up about 500 pounds of garbage. Went down the next year about 1,000 pounds. And then the third year we had a dozen people come with us from all over the world, but mostly kind of Tucson and Prescott and a handful of places around the Southwest. And so we were able to make a much bigger impact and really clean the whole mountain, 50 plus years of garbage from top to bottom.
Oh my God.
But as we're there on the side of this frozen mountain in the middle of South America, one of the Arizonans asked me, he says, Matt, how many times have you been to the canyon? And I said, well, which canyon? And he laughed and laughed, and he said, that tells me you haven't spent much time in the canyon. There's only one canyon, Matt. It's the Grand Canyon. And I said, man, I haven't been yet. And everybody, it got really quiet. Everybody stopped and looked. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm missing something. I'm missing something big. And so he said, here's what I'm going to do. As soon as we get back, I'm going to help you have a Grand Canyon experience. So what a great friend. He got me a permit. As a one-person permit going from the North Rim to the South Rim in just 2 days. But he said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to drive yourself to the South Rim. He said, and you're going to get the shuttle. And he said, and the shuttle's going to drive along the rim drive. And whatever you do not look out that window. You have to promise me you're not going to see the canyon from a moving vehicle for your first time. And I said, okay, I promise. I promise. He said, and then it's going to drop you up at the North Rim. He said, do not go to the North Rim Lodge. He said, you walk out on this trail and you walk down, and he told me Ken Patrick Trail. He said, you walk down the Ken Patrick Trail for 40 minutes. He said, and then you turn into the forest, and then you start heading toward the canyon. And he said, and if you time it just right, you might get to see the sunset. And so I followed his every direction. And you want to talk about a Grand Canyon guru. Like this guy, he's still alive. His name is Eb Eberlein. He is has more miles below the rim, definitely more nights below the rim than anybody else alive right now. And he was a backpacking guide there for decades. And so he set me up with this Grand Canyon experience, and I did what he said, and I walked through the forest. And as I was walking along the Ken Patrick Trail, looking at my watch, I got 10 more minutes to go. My first Grand Canyon experience was auditory. To my left was the forest on the Kaibab Plateau, and there was sound there. There was wind kind of rushing through the trees. There were, squirrels, skittering about, and there was sound within the forest. But then I noticed on my right ear, which was pointed toward the canyon, even though I couldn't see it yet, there was a void of sound. There was this vacuum with a lack of anything, and I thought, this is so strange. I'm hearing in stereo two very different environments. I must be getting closer to the canyon. And then once my clock hit 40 minutes and I, did like he said and walked toward just a remote, secret little spot on the edge of the North Rim. And sure enough, it was just as the sun was setting. So the sky was purple and the canyon, and there was orange like bursting across the Coconino sandstone. And I fell to my knees and cried my face off alone on the rim of one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
That is gorgeous. I'm so glad I asked that. My God. My sister-in-law burst into tears when she saw it. And that's marvelous. Oh, man. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the trail. You'll find Soto's Outpost in the heart of Tubac and on the AZ 250 passport under Dining 250. Whether inside or on the festive patio, great food, margaritas, lively mariachi music on weekends welcome you. Customer John said, I go because the people are wonderful, the rayonas are awesome, love it all. Family owned, also find gluten-free options, catering service, what's not to love? And we're back, and the first thing I want to do before we talk about the trail is look at the trail on my coffee mug. And Matt, you know which one I have, right?
I do, yeah.
And actually, I bought two of them. I gave my dad the other one. And I love that mug. And everybody else will see it when they hear the podcast, because this is what will be on that podcast, with all the elevations of everywhere in Arizona practically. So you surely have been to the highest Arizona peak, the Peaks. Yes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge, huge fan of the Peaks.
So you've hiked there probably.
Yeah. Again, it took me a long time before I finally got to the top of Mount Humphreys, but I've been back numerous times. And I have a thing for volcanoes. Maybe a lot of people do, but I think when I'm naturally attracted to mountains, they are inadvertently always volcanoes. And so the peaks, the way they stand above Flagstaff, and you can see them from hundreds of miles away from certain vantage points, makes them really special. So I go there not often, but it's a special trip for me. It's not just a hike. I think when I go to Mount Humphreys, it has to be because of like an important life event or maybe seeking an answer to something. Yeah. I treat my trips at Mount Humphreys more as like pilgrimage than recreation. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Now, while we're there, before we talk about the trail, tell me about music, specifically drumming. How did you get into that and where?
So I grew up in a musical family. Everybody pretty much had to play an instrument. There weren't many rules in the house, but that was one of them. You have to play music. And so it wasn't like sitting around playing music together. Often that rarely happened, actually, but each one of my family members played some instrument. My dad was a drummer when he was younger, mostly in high school. My brother played saxophone, really great baritone sax player in high school. And then as I was growing up, probably starting in elementary school, I started playing instruments and experimented with a lot of them. in band and orchestra, and it really eventually landed on percussion. It allowed me to express myself. So instead of just playing an instrument, it felt more like a personal expression, as opposed to, woodwinds or strings. There was something about percussion that allowed me to kind of, speak through my fingertips. So after high school, I started studying African drumming, and then Middle Eastern, and then eventually Indian. The classical music of North India uses drums called tabla, and the tabla are melodic drums. It's more of a melodic instrument than a drum, really. So they're tuned to match the key of whatever the lead instrument is, like a sitar or a sarod or a sarangi or a classical Indian stringed instrument.
Wow.
So I started studying those with a local tutor, and then eventually got a classical music Indian guru who lived in India but would come to Tucson once a year, and I get to have 2 weeks of intensive with him, and then continued to study these drums. Now it's probably 25 years that I've been pretty committed to learning this one particular art form, and have studied in India and here in the U.S., play with a local group. It's really wonderful. It's a great way for me to express myself creatively and to keep a tradition alive that's maybe about 500 years old.
That is beautiful. Very cool. Now, why did I think that they would have been Hopi?
Probably.
You have connections with Hopi.
That's right. So you would have thought that because the other musical project that I did was actually playing clay pot drums. And clay pot drums can be found in almost every culture in the world. And if you were to look inside my house, you'd see that I have a problem. There's drums everywhere, from Africa, Arabic nations, indigenous drums. Like it looks like, the Musical Instrument Museum inside Matt's house. But one of the drums I love are these clay pot drums, and they're commonly found in places like India. Actually, they call them gatam. It's a chromatically tuned clay pot drum. And then also the udu from Nigeria. It's a beautiful clay pot drum with a hole on the side, and you play it by hitting that hole and pushing the air through, and it sounds like water almost. But the connection to Hopi is through actually a flute. And in addition to playing music, I've been studying ethnomusicology for about 30 years. And so, this is the study of the music of the world and the people who play these instruments. I've been fascinated by a variety of drums and vocal styles, and I help share this kind of music with people through a radio show. So I host a world music radio show every Thursday night on KXCI, which is at 91.3 FM. In Tucson, or kxci.org. And so I've been studying music and sharing interesting music with people ever since I was, maybe 18 years old. But I found this amazing flute player many years ago who came and visited my radio show, and he was traveling through with a bunch of indigenous musicians. And at the time, he was like the most talented cedar flute player that I'd ever heard, in the Lakota style of flute. And then he stayed in my life for 10 or 20 years, and at some point, he stopped playing these cedar flutes, and he started playing this long flute made out of, I think, elderberry. And it was the spookiest sound I had ever heard. And he said, this flute is a replica of one that was found in a cave during an expedition in the 1940s, an archaeological dig up in the Lukachukai Mountains on present-day Navajo Nation. And they excavated this cliff dwelling, and one of the things they found were these flutes. And these flutes are now on display at the Arizona State Museum. You can go and see them. But of course, carbon 14 dating had not been discovered at the time. So when archaeologists found these flutes, they assumed, these are probably similar to other flutes that have been found in the Southwest, and the tradition is maybe 400 years old, relatively recent. So, of course, they put them in a box and stored them away. And then when technology caught up, everybody decided, okay, here's an opportunity to figure out how old these are. And it came back that they were, 1,400 years old. So these flutes and this flute tradition predated the entire everything we knew about woodwinds and flutes in the Americas by at least 1,000 years. And these were Puebloan people.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, they're ancestors of the Hopi, and there are stories.
You were the link that.
Yeah. So
I did not know that. I'm so glad you're here talking about
helped
this.
him make that connection to, okay, this is where they're from, And he had lots of questions about the flute, like what did it sound like? What scales did they play in? How did they play? Because he wanted to play them respectfully in the traditional style, but didn't know who to talk to. And I said, well, if they're Puebloan and they're flutes, I guarantee they're Hopi, because Hopi have this flute society or flute clan. It's very secretive. They don't play in public. They only play for ceremony, and their big ceremony is once every other year. So imagine being a musician where you're entrusted to this millennia old tradition, and you get one gig every other year, but it's a big responsibility. So I decided that if anybody could answer his questions about this mysterious flute that he was playing, it was Hopi. And so he flew here from Seattle, picked him up at the airport, and I drove him to Hopi. And literally on the way, I called the one Hopi musician that I knew. And I didn't say anything about flutes. I didn't say anything about it. I just said, hey, I'm going to be in town soon, and I have a friend with me. Can we stop by? And he said, yeah, sure, stop by. So, he had no idea what was coming, but he was at work on the Hopi Nation. He worked for the Veterans Affairs Department at the time. He later went on to become the vice chairman of the Hopi tribe. But I knew him as a musician. He's a very, very talented singer. His name is Clark Tenakongva. And Clark has many published albums on Canyon Records and also on my record label since we met. But I introduced these two guys together, and then Gary started asking questions about flutes, and Clark's eyes got really big, like he was being asked questions that he shouldn't be asked. So he closed the door of his office, and he asked him, he said, before you ask me any more questions, do you have one of those flutes with you? And Gary said, yeah, I have one. He said, well, go get it. So I ran to the car and retrieved it and came back and handed it to Gary. And there he is with his trembling fingers. And he starts to play. And Clark at first is sitting there with his arms crossed, looking like, oh no, another new age wacko I'm going to have to throw out of the building. And then as soon as he started playing, Lisa, I saw Clark melt. He went from being stern and serious and cautious to he was staring into the sun. And I couldn't believe what I saw happening in front of me, like a non-native friend playing a replica of an ancient flute, and then this Hopi guy just being completely mesmerized. And come to find out, Clark had been having dreams for years about standing on top of the mesa, the Hopi Mesa, and singing, which is what he does. And then these storm clouds would gather, and then it started to rain, and he would wake up. And he would wake up and try to remember the song, because he's like, okay, this is a message from the Creator. I need to remember this song and sing this song, and it'll bring rain to the Hopi Mesas. And he could never remember the song. And this went on. It was a recurring dream. And it turns out, as we're sitting there in his office, he realized everything that he'd been hearing in that dream wasn't his song. It was this flute. It was the sound of this flute. He'd been dreaming about this flute and not knowing it. Gosh. Until Gary showed up and played it for him. And then the rest, I'll say, is almost history, because it started a relationship between these two. The revival of an ancient flute technique, the preservation of Hopi music. We went on to record an album inside the Desert View Watchtower on the south rim of Grand Canyon. It was nominated for a Native American Music Award. And then we eventually recorded an album in homage of Bears Ears when Clark was working very hard to preserve and protect Bears Ears National Monument. So I was lucky enough not just to make this introduction, but to play clay pot drums with them. And the beauty there is that you have this vocal style, which is very ancient, and then you have the oldest known flute in the Americas. And we collectively decided that skinned drums would not be appropriate because they weren't old enough. We needed an older sound, and the older sound were these clay pot drums, which are used in Hopi, and like I said, they're used in Africa, and really every country that's ever used ceramics has used pots for storing grain, carrying water, cooking food, and for music.
Man, oh man, oh man. Now see, I thought when I met you that the Arizona Trail was the biggest part of your life, and right now it seems like just a little part of your life. That is incredible. So we're going to take another break before we talk about the trail. Hold on. The 1904 courthouse is in Nogales and also on the Passport 250, Arizona. This splendid neoclassical building is from Tofa stone quarried there. The $35,000 cost sounds low, but that's $1.2 million in today's money. While still housing some county offices, it's now open for community use. and hosts events for visitors as well. Cultural events include exhibitions and a glimpse into Santa Cruz County's legal and civic heritage. Definitely worth a stop. We're back. You have anything to say about the trail? This is fascinating, and I kind of love I'd never heard it, because this way it's not just me that gets to hear it, which is even better. Tell me some about some of the things that you have loved about the trail.
The Arizona Trail it's almost like a living being. You know, I made that reference before when I was seeing the Sonoran Desert from Picacho Peak, but it seems like an organism. The trail, the way that it literally winds and carves and curves its way through the whole state, up mountains and down into canyons through forests, it really gets to show off some of what Arizona has to offer. I don't think there is any way to capture it all, because every mountain range, every desert, every national monument, every part of the state is so unique and beautiful. And there's no way that a single trail could capture it all. But the Arizona Trail has done a pretty wonderful job of showing off some of what Arizona has to offer, especially with biodiversity. You know, Sky Island mountain ranges, Mogollon Rim, Grand Canyon, Babbitt Ranch, the Kaibab Plateau, and then everything in between. But I love that an organization like the Arizona Trail Association, who I've been lucky enough to work for 14 years and volunteer for about 5 or 6 years before that this organization is committed to protecting and preserving this path so that individuals can have their own unique experience, whether they're hiking or riding a horse or a mountain bike, doing it slowly, 1 mile at a time over 20 years, or doing it all at once in a single backpacking trip. People connecting to the land in a beautiful way is really what we're all about. And that's my favorite part of the trail, is how it provides access to these beautiful landscapes. It's not so much about the trail, really. The trail is just access. It's a carved little piece that gets you into these landscapes, but it's those mountains and canyons and forests and deserts. I mean, that's the magic of the trail.
That is gorgeous. And that takes me back to, I think the first time I spoke to the trail meeting was because of the 1989 documentary, whatever, half-hour show we did with Dale Shewalter, the creator of it. And what you just said reminded me of his line about the Mogollon Rim. And he said, picture the mountains dancing with the deserts.
Yes.
And everything you're saying is making me think, because this is how I think, that Dale Shewalter is just beaming, listening to every word you're saying from wherever he is. And so proud, so glad that you are being willing to give some of your time to the trail he helped create. I just think he's so thrilled with that. And I know I am.
Thank you, Lisa. That means so much to me.
Well, it means a lot to me and probably a lot to him. Before you go, what else have I not asked you that we should get to hear?
I guess if we were to talk about, the importance of stewardship, conservation, I think that Arizona is so beautiful and so diverse, and it's changing. And change is not bad. I know us humans, we just can't stand change. We do everything we can to fight against it. It's the tragedy of being alive and caring for places. Change does happen. But I think that the thing that I'm reminded of over and over again of like life purpose is being a good steward, like leaving a place cleaner than you found it, and helping people to find their own way and learn more about themselves through nature and through nature connections. And Arizona, we're so fortunate to live in this state because it does offer so many diverse climates and landscapes. And so whether you identify more with being in a deep sandstone canyon or standing on the top of a tall volcano or being like nestled within a ponderosa pine forest, Arizona offers all these opportunities for connection. And I think that, people only are willing to protect what they really love, and they only love what they know and have like connections to. So the more that we as those who love Arizona can help others connect with the natural parts of the state, my hope is that they'll fall in love with it, and then they'll want to protect it, because we do have a lot of resources here that are maybe incompatible with conservation. And so we have to find that sweet balance between preserving things for future generations while using the most of the land, for now, for 2025. And I think the more that people are connected to the land, they'll see that preserving it, conserving it, that's the greatest resource. That is invaluable. And hopefully it will help other generations experience little pieces of the Arizona that we love.
So you never have to wonder if you're wasting your time, because you are constantly contributing to that.
I think I always question, is this the best use of my time? What should I be doing? I've been doing this for 14 years. Maybe I should be doing something else. Like, how else can I contribute? I'm not doing enough. That's also, I think, tragedy of being an overachiever. But no, I think that as long as I'm helping people connect to nature, then I'm doing it right. That's what I'm meant to do, and I did that as an outdoor guide. I did that as a writer and editor. I've done that in most every job I've ever done. And I think this is, if it's not the ultimate, then it is one of the greatest expressions yet of my ability to do that by helping to lead this organization to protect, maintain, and improve the Arizona Trail.
Matt Nelson, I did not think I could possibly admire you more or like you better. But right now, I do. You're even more amazing than I knew. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that.
You're so welcome. It's an honor.
We'd really like to hear from you about anything this show led you to think about. Write to us at celebratingaz.com. The wizard behind making a conversation into a podcast is Tom Heidinger. The music comes from Daniel Blatney. And I'm Dana Cooper.